Okay, everything should be recording. Okay, so let's get right into the nitty-gritty of the details here, and have a little look at a couple of things. First of all, as we look at the calendar, remember we have a pretty heavy calendar today. A couple of things to keep in mind. Interest rate announcements will be coming up here in just a couple hours, for about 4.5 hours, so a little while, for Australia. So just keep in mind that's going to be happening. That's probably going to be a big mover, a big shocker. A lot of stuff could be going on there. So if you have any Aussie trades, remember we closed our Aussie yen yesterday just with a couple pips profit, just to kind of get out and see where things went. If you have any Aussie trades left over, be super careful with any of that stuff. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. Coming up this week, though, we've got quite a bit of news. We have quite a bit of news out tomorrow. Wednesday, we've got some stuff. The ADP report, of course, as we're getting into some of the non-farm stuff. All the ISM reports are going to be due this week. Thursday, we have interest rate announcements out of European Union and the UK, so that's going to be a big mover. And there's some very small rumors that the UK might be raising their interest rates. If they do, that would be hugely bullish pound dollar. And then going into Friday, of course, we have employment numbers for Canada and the US. So all pretty big stuff. We got a pretty big week of announcements coming up. So we'll keep our eyes and ears open for everything. Okay, so the euro dollar. I didn't have much time to talk about this in too much great detail because I was internetless and all that stuff. But I talked about it a bit on Friday, and I talked about 130 and 150-200. 130 on the euro, 150-200 on the pound dollar. And above 130, things were pretty bullish for a while, and above 150-200, things were pretty bullish. Not totally bullish, not completely bullish, but they're bullish enough that we should see some moves upward, but will hopefully give us some opportunities to really short these pairs at some nice levels. One thing to keep in mind, though, to look at here is we're just basically like clockwork on this on a lot of these pairs here. We made a new high starting at the beginning of May, 132.45. It was a new high for a couple of months, but it was a high, so we started the month off with a high, and then the euro, ran down pretty well. Not as far as I would have thought or was hoping for, but it ran down about 450 pips for the month of May. So our pre-summer movement on the euro was a little bit softer than expected, but still nearly 500 pips. So pretty good little run there. And then we started to consolidate partway through the month, and now we're starting off June making another new high. So we're going to see where this goes and see how this plays out. You can see that we have this big trend line right here, and we're just kind of breaking that level and breaking above all of that. That's around the 130. This area you can see here is around 130.60, and it looks like we've opened above that now on the daily chart. So reason to believe that we definitely could be headed into some of these higher levels, probably 130-200. At least, but I'm going to definitely be looking for opportunities right up around this 130-200 area to short, but I think we're probably going to make a bit of a run up there and even potentially higher. But then again, from that area, we'll be looking to short, and we'll be looking for some opportunities to get back into this thing. If we look at the fib levels from this bigger run, we had this nice drop on the euro dollar a couple months ago, and you can see that it came down and it ran up and kind of tested the 50% fib and came back down, didn't make a new low, didn't break the low, and is right back up again, and it's just below the 38. So we still can get all the way up to that 50, which is again around 132 30, 40, and there's going to be a lot of resistance right there, and that could be a great area to start shorting. But obviously that's a little ways away, 150 pips or so. So what can we do right now with this euro dollar, and what are some of the opportunities? Well, obviously we have a missed pivot here. It's not super far away, but it's about 20 pips away, so there's some of that. So keep in mind, that little movement. I think the euro might be a little tiny bit choppy, so I'm not super excited to get into anything on this pair just yet. But what I am going to be looking for is opportunities to short, or excuse me, to buy against 130. So we're only at 130.60. I could see this dipping down just a little bit and giving us, a little bit of a run back towards that 130 area. And if we get that, then that's where I'm going to be looking to buy. Now remember, let me just move this fib level real quick. Remember, when I say buy against 130, I mean I want to get into something where I can have my stops below 130. So I'm going to kind of let everyone decide how far away from 130 they want to enter, but I would say somewhere within 20 to 30 pips. So looking to get long euro dollar, probably 130.20, 130.30 with stops below 130. So that's kind of what I'm going to be looking for coming up here. But I'm actually a little bit more. I'm a little more sideline on the euro dollar right now. That's initially what I'm looking for right now to get long against that big level that started this big run. But I'm kind of on the sidelines a little bit as well because I think this pair is going to be a little bit of a wild ride. You can see that we've got some trend lines, and again, that's why we're looking at kind of this get in against 130. We could see these levels tested going into the UK session and so on. But we are breaking this big trend line, and so that's why I still think it's good to get in and get long against 130. So stops below 130, entries as close to 130 as possible. 130.20 would be good, 130.30, and I'll update on that. But like I said, I'm kind of looking to see how price action goes on the euro dollar and what we might be looking for and doing and so on. But one thing that's always interesting to look at, I always just like to make these comparisons. Sometimes they're totally validated, sometimes they're absolutely not. But if we go back to last summer and how things went, so remember in May of last summer, or right before last summer, we made that new high right the first day of May, and then the euro actually tanked about 950 pips. And then it rallied most of the month of June, and then we ended up making a new low in July, which was pretty strange. But at least we can count on that kind of the low of May. We retested that not too far out, and then ended up making a new low, and then it rallied and did all that kind of stuff. And so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, and I'm going to be looking for something like that to happen. At least a retest of May's lows sooner than later. It's summertime, volumes, things are uncertain. You can see, the Fed is making all these statements about everyone's getting really kind of set on the fact that the Fed might be pulling the QE sooner than expected, but yet the dollar is not totally rallying from that, but it kind of is, and it's just a lot of uncertainty going on right now. So the one thing that I think we can count on is looking for the low of May to be retested sometime in the next week or two or three kind of area, sometime during the month of June. And just kind of looking to get short against some of these recent highs for the bigger, longer-term run. And we are going to have some long-term trades, surprisingly, in the summertime. There's a lot of short-term choppy stuff, but there's definitely some longer-term stuff that we'll be looking for there as well. Okay, so that's just a little update on the euro dollar. Again, 30 to 40 pips on the dip would probably be a good place to buy and get in on some of this, and so I'll have more updates about that. I'll check in tonight as well and just talk a little bit about where that entry should specifically be, but that's kind of what I'm looking at. Okay, so pound dollar. The pound dollar pre-summer movement was a little bit better. The high, again, we made a high in May, and so, again, we're just the first couple of days here of June, so we've kind of cleared May. That's where the biggest pre-summer movements typically happen. So we made this high in May, and the pound went down about just shy of 600 pips. So the pre-summer movements on everything so far, except for the Aussie dollar, were smaller than they have been, but they were still several hundred pips, and we haven't quite seen too many, several hundred pip movements over the last couple of months during a month period. So we saw some nice stuff, some nice movements. We got 600 pips on this one, nice little double bottom, and now it's heading up. So what I looked at here is I drew my trend line back to the high of May, the very first part of May. This is one I've had for quite a while, and we just look at this little rundown. We cleared the 23% fib later last week and made that little dip. And again, we ran up to the 38, up to the 50, and we've just tested the 61.8. So we've tested that 61.8. I'm basically looking at the pound dollar as a potential opportunity. Again, I'm kind of looking to trade the reaction on this movement here. We're going to be looking for short-term stuff this week because there's a lot of rumors, again, that the UK might actually raise interest rates, which would be hugely bullish. The UK has just been having lots and lots of negative data, and then it's the last few weeks it started to turn and things have started to get a little bit positive. And so if we have some positive data, we could see the pound really rally up into some of these upper areas. So we're still a ways away from the high, about 275 pips or so. I will be absolutely, no matter what the conditions are, looking to short the pound dollar against 15600. Definitely. So that means, entries around 155.100 to 155.50. We'll be looking for some long-term runs down below 156.00. But that's obviously a couple of hundred pips away. So some shorter-term movements will definitely be, again, looking to get in on the pullback. We're going to be just drawing some little fib levels on these little short-term runs. Remember, our Friday low to our first day of the week high is just a little over 200 pips, and so we're going to be watching for that. I'm not going to do any kind of major selling on this on the pound dollar, but I will be watching. Let me just get rid of this guy here for a second. I will be watching this little range right here. And remember, we're just sitting at and below the 23% fib. Now, I know we're a little ways away, like 55 pips away from that high, but we've got about 35 pips to go before we get to the 38 and 60 or so before we get to the 50. And I would dare say that the pound will almost definitely reach those lows sometime over the next couple of hours. We had some pretty crazy rallies. It's time for things to get choppy. It's time for some pullbacks. And so this little run right here, the fact that we're already below that 23% fib just a little bit, I want to see a little bit of a push higher. Up towards this 153, probably 45, maybe even 50 to get short against the high and target at least the 38% fib, which is 152.85. I don't know if I'm going to push it all the way to the 50. I may not. We'll see how it goes. But one thing's for sure is that I want to see about 20 to 30 pips of retracement up before we short against this high and target the 38% fib / miss daily pivot point. And we've also missed the weekly pivot point as well. So there's going to be, there's a lot of pressure pulling this thing down. So I think we have a pretty safe chance at shorting against this high. Remember, it's pretty common to make a high or low for the week and then go the other direction from that. So I'm not expecting the pound to really tank and hit this weekly pivot super soon, but I think we have a pretty easy trade once again with entries between 153.45 and 153.50 to short against the high, which is currently about 153.75 with this profit target of the 38% fib. So I'm going to be looking at that. Of course, I'll put this in the notes and it'll be posted in the video, but that's kind of what I'm looking for the moment, and then ultimately looking for I'm not sure exactly where I want to potentially buy this on the way up to that up to like 154.00 and so on. So I'm going to have more details on that. But for now, let's just look at the short-term sell, and then I'll have more details on that buy where I want to be doing that. Okay, so that's euro dollar, pound dollar. Any questions on that? Any questions? Let's have a look at the Aussie dollar. The Aussie dollar has gone kind of bananas. We had this big rally up right here. 2 candles ran up 135 pips. The Aussie made this nice. So again, speaking of summer highs and summer, pre-summer runs and so on, the Aussie dollar made a high May 1st after a little bit of a dip for the previous couple of weeks, and then went down about 850 pips. So pretty good little run on that Aussie, and now it's kind of bottoming out. We've just hit this monthly pivot so far. We're kind of in retracement mode here. Ted, yeah, so missed pivot trades. Like I said, I'm not going to do too much on this euro dollar, but I think we have a good missed pivot trade on the pound dollar, and and we don't have a missed weekly pivot on the euro dollar yet, and we barely have a missed daily pivot there. We do have a missed weekly and daily on the pound dollar, so that's where I'm looking to sell there. And then on the Aussie dollar, we have just a missed daily pivot, but we don't have a missed weekly pivot. So I'll get into some of those details in just a moment here. But what we're looking at here, from this high way up here to this low down here, which is 1,050 pips, the Aussie is testing right now the 23% fib. Now let's not miss this, guys. Let's definitely not miss this. Now it is a bit of a distance between the 23% fib and the low. It's about 245 pips, which is a lot. But as we start to test this level, this is a monthly pivot and 23% fib. If we can make a little bit of a push above this, which we already have, and just kind of open above that and make some moves, then we're going to be looking for some little retracements to get long Aussie dollar somewhere down here. Now that's going to be a little bit of a push higher, and then like 150 pips of retracement is what we're going to need. But keep in mind, this is all stuff that we're going to be watching over the next couple of weeks. But we're testing that 23% fib. And I want to see some pullback so that we can get in with stops below this low, and we'll be looking to buy the Aussie dollar, again, for a bit of a longer term run. It'll be a choppy move, but for a bit of a longer term run, we should see some good stuff happen there. So that's what I'm looking for on the Aussie dollar, and particularly if the Aussie dollar comes out with some bad news tonight with the interest rate announcements, I will be happily looking to buy against this low if it spikes down. Again, we're 200 plus pips away from this low right now, so if we spike down, I'll be definitely here and ready to get in on that move down. Now the Aussie dollar does have a nice missed pivot here, so there's something to look at there. What I wanted to do on this shorter term time frame here was, again, just get our fib level from that Friday low to the high of this week, which is about 240 pips. You can see that our 23% fib is right here. And that's about 57 pips from the high. So let's look for the cross of the 23% fib from 23 to pivots about 20 pips. Current market price to pivot is about 45 pips. So there's a couple of things, as always, this doesn't ever change, but there's a couple of things that we can do. Number one, well, again, there's interest rate news coming up on Australia tonight, so I will not do anything, and I would recommend that nobody do anything until the news comes out. But our couple of options are just trade against this high. We're currently only 40 pips from the high. And trade against that high, targeting the 23%, targeting the missed pivot, using the 23 as kind of that catalyst that the trade will probably play out. But again, just sit and wait. I'll have updates coming up after the interest rate announcements tonight, but don't do anything on the Aussie dollar or Aussie yen yet. There's speculations of news, there's this, that, and the other that could happen. Let's just wait until the interest rate news comes out, and then we can set our trades. But just know that we've got our fib levels and we've got a missed pivot, and that's what we'll be looking for. But we're not going to do anything. We have short-term daily pivots, short-term daily pivots and short-term daily fib levels and longer-term fib levels that we need to watch with the coming news. So we'll just keep those in mind, and we'll be watching them. And then, as always, yen pairs are all over the place. I think we opened right on top of the daily pivot for the yen, for the euro yen, that is. That thing's pulled back a whole bunch. And then Aussie yen is just a few pips away from the daily pivot, but again, we're not going to do anything with the Aussie yen because of the news coming up. And that's kind of what we're looking for on those pairs. So again, I'm just definitely gonna wait for any. I'm gonna wait for the Australian news for any Aussie dollar, Aussie yen setups, and then we're going to be, most likely just waiting for that pullback on the euro dollar. Right here, pound dollar, we've got our game plan, which is get a little bit higher. We've already crossed the 23% fib, so let's look for an entry around between 153.40 and 153.50. Just depends on how comfortable you are with stop losses, because you could end up with a 30 or 20 pip stop loss, so it kind of depends. So let's look for a little retracement there and target the 38% fib. That'll be in the notes, of course. Hold off on the Aussie dollar, hold off on the Aussie yen. And one thing I guess that I didn't mention here about the euro dollars, we can always watch this level as well. That's 150 pips, so that's worth keeping an eye on. As far as that little short-term movement goes, which is, you know, again, just the high to the low on the daily fib situation. There we go. Well, I guess there we are. So 23% fib, it's already below it. So yeah, you know, maybe this euro dollar will give us a little short-term sell opportunity. I wouldn't look for anything really long term, but it's definitely given us that move. You know, it's open below the 23, and it looks like it's trying to rally here. So let's look for an opportunity. You know, we're 40 pips from the high. You know, let's get this thing up there a little bit higher. 130.85, 130.90. To short, because we have opened below the 23% fib, to short targeting the 38/daily pivot point. And let's play it safe and target the 38, which is 130.50. And if we get an entry around, you know, around 130.85, that gives us about a 35 pip profit target with approximately a 25 pip stop loss. So a little bit of retracement on the euro dollar, and we'll sell against the high, targeting the 38% fib. And like I said on the pound dollar, a little bit of retracement here, and we'll short against the high, targeting the 38% fib as well. And then everything else, we're kind of sitting out and waiting right now until we get more Australian news. And I'll have updates in the chat about that. But that's kind of where we are. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions, comments about anything? I'm going to update the notes right now, so it'll all be posted and there for details. But yeah, Tom, definitely. Missed pivots are always targets, and so, you know, again, a missed pivot going back that far, that just strengthens our case for that run up into the 38% fib. You know, if we can cross this 23. So yeah, that'll definitely be a great target to look for. Plus, it's a good psychological level. Parity is always something to watch for. So absolutely. Okay, guys, questions, comments, shoot them over. I'm gonna update the notes right now and get the video posted. Yeah, Steve, it's at 9:30 p.m. chat time, so that's in about exactly 4 hours from now. So pretty late Eastern time, pretty late. But yep, that one's coming right up. Okay, guys, don't go anywhere. Keep typing the questions. I'm gonna get these notes put in right now.